formal meeting today. So, and I see that Cesar has got this wonderful duty, and the recording is started. So this session will actually be viewable afterwards through the Global Chamber. So first of all, and most of important, I want to thank Doug Brunke, who is the chemical engineer, used to be one of my old competitors many moons ago, but he's a dear friend. And I want to thank Doug for the opportunity and the open-mindedness and the trust to allow Gloria to chair this great effort. Every one of us has a book that we want to write inside, that we never get to doing it. But with the guide of Manoj, Vlady, and Joan today, we'll definitely learn a lot more in terms of what we can do, what we cannot do, what's possible. And today also we have speakers, Limor, that is, I found extremely, I met her last week at the Israeli Global Chamber meeting. She had a great opportunity, a great view of television interviews as a marketing tool. And I said, my God, this one would be perfect for writers. So I invited her. She's been very kind to accommodate here with us today. So I want to say, we also should be seeing here coming over Yarin Kimor, and he should be joining us. He's got some very great program about creativity for book writers. So I invited him to come over and we'll see him. But why don't we start this morning with Manoj, and then we can, let's say, I have different questions we ask for the interviews, but the first one is always, it's fascinating to me, is what motivated me to write the book. Now, what I found out about Manoj is something that touched me really dear in my heart. We basically live in a selfish society, or mainly selfish society. The me syndrome is major sport in the US and globally. And Manoj actually has said, well, not me, what about, what can I do for you? And so there was a real opening and totally great conversation. Manoj, tell us a little bit, what motivated to write the book that you did?
Hey, Professor, yes. Professor, just one point. It's Manoj, because he's so polite and such an amazing man, as I think we're all going to see in a moment. I just wanted to make sure that we're all pronouncing your name correctly. Awesome. Manoj, you are an amazing leader, and we really appreciate working with you in Ahmedabad and Pune and all across India and around the world. Please go ahead. I'm sorry to interrupt.
Thank you, Doug, and thank you.
And is Manoj also in India, or is Manoj in India?
Yes, Manoj, I'm in Mumbai, India. So thank you, and lovely meeting all of you all. So I would like to start by saying that the book is about networking. And when I was struggling with the titles first, somebody said talk about connecting the dots, the networker, etc., etc. But then after a lot of evaluation, the title is the human connect, because though we all do networking, but networking is seen as a transactional mindset. Generally, it's all being used. We all do that. There is no judgment about it, nothing wrong about it. But what if we connect in the human way? I'm here because of Doug. Because I connected with Doug on the Global Chamber platform, I got invited as a panelist. We do business with Doug and other aspects in the country because of the connect. But the connect happens not if you scratch my back, I scratch yours. So the key is, when you meet a person, how do you try to spend some time finding out? That's what I said to Professor, is it's in giving that we receive. So, but the mind and the lens has to be, like I quote Saint Francis of Assisi, it's in giving that we receive. So taking that further, if we start listening properly and understanding what the person, in a conversation, which is, I'll get into detail, then you pick up, oh, this is what he's looking for. So if we put somebody else's interest before us, then the magic happens. That's what I talk about in the book all along. I can go on and on, but in the interest of panel. So that was the reason I wrote it, the human connect. It talks about networking in all ways without using the word networking. And the objective was to, and I've read a lot of books written on the subject, on this subject, And the only one I still find very relevant was probably written 80 years back by Dale Carnegie on how to win friends and influence people. Honestly, it still talks about the basic truths of life, how to remember names, how to make people feel special, body language, etc., etc. So this is what I have tried to write in my own way, and it's all based on life experiences which I'm sharing. I'll pause here.
Manoj, thank you so much again. I was totally fascinated, and I'm really looking forward to reading your book and learning from your book. And Vlady, let's go with you next. As a child, of course, Dracula in Italy is very well known, but he's always seen as a fantasy. So, but I also knew that it was a real king, but not much was known. So I was fascinated as to why you actually wrote about Dracula as not the fantasy, but as actually the real king. Let us know a little bit what brought you to it. Thank you, Vlady.
Yeah, thank you so much. Well, I was born in a country full of legends and stories and about kings and witchcraft. I was fascinating about history from early childhood, thus continuing my university studies in history and later on my master's in archaeology. And so history was always, my cup of tea. And even today that I am in a different field of business, history never left me. The motivation came from my kids, basically, because I was telling them the story of Dracula, and not as much as of Dracula, but of his son. And that was a story that continued for years and years. You're going to bed 15, 20 minutes before, you're falling asleep, to be continued. And the story went on and on and on until they got to the age that they didn't want to listen to my stories anymore. But the story never left me. And then with their, push that you have to put it to paper, and so I did. As I was telling you, it took me about 15 years to finish the book, because life is too busy and the inspiration doesn't always come.
That's very true. One of the things that fascinated me about what you told me about your book, which I've not read yet, but I will, is actually the ability of you to participate, to actually create it as a historian, telling the truth for what you found. But also what fascinated me is that the ability of you in the same book to move the story from the days of Dracula and Romania, Transylvania, etc., to today's date. So it's a history book, but also getting to fantasy, right?
Yeah, it is. Partly is actual historical characters, put it in the correct time period, traveling through countries that did exist at the time. Some of them exist today, places, because I'm moving the story from Wallachia, because Dracula was from Wallachia, that is today's Romania, not Transylvania, through Europe, through the Middle East, into Israel, into Turkey, back to Wallachia. But I had the main character, that is Dracula's son, forced to travel into the future from the 15th century in order not to be killed as his father was killed through treachery. So he was transported into the 20th century, waiting there for hundreds of years, theoretically, until destiny was fulfilled and transported back with a group of other teens of his age into the 15th century, and that's where the story continues.
To me, it was fascinating. Thank you, Vlady, and I'll get back to you. Thank you. And then I want to talk to, when I go to Joan, and Joan, you opened my eyes to a totally new way. And I'm so glad you chose that book today to talk about it, Joan. If you want to unmute yourself.
Sure.
Awesome.
Thank you.
And the thing that it was fascinating, and Joan will tell you more about it, you know, Manoj wrote his book, Vlady wrote his book, me and my wife wrote our book. It is very uncommon to have many writers participate in writing a book. And that's what Joan chose. And I'm so glad that she did, because it's really opening the eyes to a totally new paradigm, which actually is addressed by Manoj in his book, this issue of communication and everything else. Joan, I'll leave the floor to you. How did you ever get to wanting to write this book?
So good morning, everyone. It's such an honor to be here. Thank you for this opportunity. You know, as a girl from the island, I grew up in lack. And when I came to the United States, I got an opportunity to see what abundance is like. I worked in corporate America for 25 years. And when I left, I wanted to impact lives and change outcomes. And I wanted to serve others. And I became a writer. After writing my 9th book, I recognized something, that there's a lot of people out there that have stories, but don't know how to write it, or is afraid because they don't know how to get it published. So I wanted to be a change maker, and I wanted to be able to give people an opportunity to collaborate on a book. In 2020, in the midst of the pandemic, we wrote a book called The Image in the Mirror, and 20 women participated in that book. And I recognized that everyone who was a part of that book was able to go on and use the book as a building tool for business. And so I decided to do it a second time. And this time I invited 17 people to be a part of this project. The subtitle of the book is Manifesting a Dream Deferred, because what I recognize as I speak to authors is that people have dreams in their heart that they want to be able to get materialized, but somewhere along the way, they have had hurdles or adversities or roadblocks or something that stopped them, but it's still there in their heart. So I wanted to be able to seek those people out and give them an opportunity to write the stories, especially those that have already decided that I've placed my dreams on the back burner for too long, and now I want to make it, now I want to work on it. So I found those people, but I took it a step further, Professor Roberto. I decided that not only was I going to put these 16 stories in this book, I wanted to also be done visually. And so we made a movie out of these 16 stories. And on May 21st, our documentary launched right here in North Carolina.
That, John, is incredible. And I actually offered John, many of you know me already, but I don't know if you know, I live here in Sedona, in Arizona, a wonderful, mystical place, magical place. And once a year, we have a festival, an international movie festival, whereby there are 2 organizations. One is called Illuminates, and one is actually International Sedona Festival, whereby they review some unusually deserving movies. Some are very well known, and some are just, you know, coming out of the digital printout, and they allow them to show to thousands of people that actually come to visit Sedona. We have about 3 million people visiting a year here, and with 10,000 people, so it's incredible. So I just told Joan that as a personal commitment, I was going to be introducing her to the director of the International Film Festival, helping her in reaching that target audience, which is really universal from Sedona. So I'm delighted. I'm selfishly, Manoj, I'm selfishly looking at this so I can see the movie. That is awesome. Thank you, Joan, tremendously.
Thank you so much.
Now, one of the things that I found out by writing a book is that, of course, there is a motivation behind it, but there's also, who am I write a book for, right? So typically, as a strategist in business, past science, the question is, who did I write the book for? Except I wrote the book for me, of course, right? But what did you write the book? So I asked the question, to Manoj. So Manoj, what is the target audience? Who should read your book, and what would they get, and what would be a reason for reading the book?
So thank you. So basically, the target audience for the book, again with my observation, is cross-section from a teenager to somebody who's in the 60s, because everybody understands relationships in their own context as we grow more mature. But why not if somebody can get it at an earlier stage? And today what is happening, because I have 3 daughters, I realize the younger generation have more aspects. The connect is not as strong. They're more digitally connected. They're more connected on social media, etc. And how they can use that extra mile to keep that personal touch. So to answer that question, that was kept in mind in terms of the audience kind of thing. And I hope it appeals to everybody across the cross section. And again, I was told that and also I made it a crisp, fast read, because in today's time, what I realize when I take feedback is less is more. So nobody wants to read detailed chapters because there is so much information available. Also, eventually I'll convert it into an Audible, because nowadays people drive and, listen to that kind of thing. So that was 2. So for my reason was highlight my knowledge, share it with the others. My personal agenda is, somehow I felt being an author sounds nice, to be very honest. And beyond that, it also opens up opportunities for me to present myself in various literary fairs, in opening up business consulting opportunities, because everybody is either buying or selling or something or the other. And if they don't have the basic art of connecting, like Joan rightly expressed how she got together a group of people, so it's not as easy. She must have reached out painstakingly, getting them together, sell to them why they need to be there, etc. So it's all about the right kind of storytelling, which I've explained in the book also. We learn by example. So I can go on because we're all passionate about it. So that was the purpose of writing, both from a generic and a personal standpoint.
That's awesome, Manoj. And what's really interesting is, in my life of a consultant, about 45, 50 years, so I've seen the good, the bad, and the ugly, right? This was interesting. Whenever you ask any business owner, so how's your business going? The typical answer is, oh, great, fantastic, I have no problem, everything is fine. Then when you actually get to work with them, you find out they really need a therapist because they have so many problems, but the communication is not there. So the field of connection and communication is so awesome, Manoj. Thank you really for writing a book. Vlady, the same question. What is who would read your book? Why would they read it in terms of your original intent?
Well, most of the people, because of the fantasy books and movies about Dracula as a vampire from the 19th century with Bram Stoker, and then subsequently many other books and movies that they came into the early 20th century, continuing basically till today. There is an image of a character that in reality did not exist. The actual Vlad Dracul was a king of Wallachia in the 15th century, fighting the Holy War against the Ottoman Empire, like most of Europe, and eventually was assassinated, killed by the Ottomans, and so that's where the actual story is. And then the fantasy begins with his son in his quest to revenge the father and save the mother that was captured by the Sultan and made his wife. Goes into the 20th century, as I mentioned before, and then back into the 15th century, chasing the Sultan throughout the Ottoman Empire until he gets to the mighty fight and kills the Sultan, saves the mother, and becomes king of Wallachia. And so it covers like 2 genres of readers. Would be the ones that they were always fascinated about Dracula, yes, and they get a new perspective of who actual Dracula was, because I would say most of the people have no idea that this guy was not a vampire, unless you really believe in vampires. And then is the historical fiction of traveling through time and traveling through Europe, and the fantasy behind it. So would be in the genre of Lord of the Rings and Hobbit and that type of audience, but also people that they do like and love history and want to understand a little bit more about the time period, the actual time period, and who Dracula was in actuality. So I hope I was able to cover both aspects of readers.
No, I'm fascinated. You really achieved one of the rarely achieved objectives, to be able to expand the target market of your audience without really affecting the depth. Because when you go to large, sometimes you lose interest. But with you, sort of these two themes: one, the real history with facts as a historian, your life, the work you've done, but the other is also the fantasy and this chronos, the way of time travel. Fascinating. I'm really looking forward to reading your book. That's all.
Thank you,
Vlady. And Joan, I mean, what's your target audience? Because you've done, by creating this group of incredible individuals with so many different stories. I mean, tell us
So thank you for that question. So I think that we are living in an age where people have a desire to feel inspired. There's so much death, there's so much suicide, there's so much mass shooting, there's so much inflation. We are living in a time where people are on the edge and just uncertain about our future. And so my audience, my books are nonfiction, faith-based. And when I think about my audience, I think about people that are career professionals. I think about people that are entrepreneurs. And I think about the average individual that's looking for a book that they can read, that gives them hope, that gives them inspiration, that gives them empowerment, that gives them encouragement. And so that is my audience. And what I love about this collaboration, this book, it's called an anthology. And the first person to ever do an anthology was a book called Chicken Soup for the Soul. So this has been around for a long, long time, right? It's just now kind of the it thing again. But when I was doing this book with the 16 stories, what I love about it is that anyone that reads it can go to whichever story they want to read first, because it's 16 bite-sized stories, right? And it is 3,000 to 5,000 words for each of those stories. And every story has a hook. It has the body, it has a resolution, and it has a conclusion. So when you read each story, you are getting the overall picture of a story of inspiration, hope, encouragement, empowerment. And so when I think about my target audience, although it's from 39 to about 59, I find that I have younger readers and older readers that are also being able to purchase these books. We have sold, the ebook alone sold 6,000 copies.
Congratulations, Joan. I mean, guys, with each one of you, of the three writers that we're featuring today, I was fascinated by a specific feature. But when Joan talked to me about this anthology, I said, thank you for choosing it, because it's such an unusual, I mean, I come from a country where there are hundreds of political parties, and they never get together. So they have to get a majority. Discussions is endless. I mean, if you have two people, they may agree. If you have three people, you have disagreement forever. So when you're telling me that you got together 16, 17, 20 people together to write a book together, oh, wow. You must be an absolute master of management of communication and a creation of agreement. Thank you, Joan.
Thank you.
Now, one of the things that is really interesting is, from the idea of a book to publishing a book, there's a long journey. I mean, Vlady said 15 years. Victoria and I spent 7, 8 years with our book, The Journey of Choices, which is an incredible fantasy story, but it's really based on reality. And what's really, there is a tremendous amount of space in between. By the way, we're not published yet. We're deciding how we're going to publish it. So the issue is there is tremendous amount of challenges that actually occur. So Manoj, tell us about your story when you wrote from the idea to the publishing of your book. What are the biggest challenges that you got?
So thank you for the question. So the biggest challenge was that I had written and I had to rewrite it, because what I chose is, at Joan, I chose a set of 10 people who would be my critics. And because we'll all love our own child and our own product which we create, and would they say, oh, you've done great things. But I wanted to, so I said, would it be a book which will be picked up, like I book a book, which is a favorite book of mine, called Now by Eckhart Tolle. Whenever I have anything to understand the mind, I think he's cracked the mind. Similar way, you pick up few books which you want to. So I said, if I need to come out with a book, so I rewrote several chapters again and again based on the input. So my challenge was, I could have published it on XYZ date, but I took time, because again I said, it's not every day I'm going to write on the same subject. So let me take time. It should come out as a masterpiece, as something which will, people would refer to. And as Joan mentioned, what I also decided, it should be a fast read, and it could be not sequential, it could be random read. So for example, there is a chapter on how to remember names, simplified. And another very important factor was, I have used very basic English, because what I've realized, to simplify things is the most difficult thing. So how to simplify it? Because, it's like, it's very tough to do that. And like they say, the common sense is most uncommon these days. So simplification was very challenging. So sequence wise, I mean, people can take chapter. Like one chapter I have is on quality versus quantity. Earlier days, we used to go, we have 100 people in the room. We will meet everybody, give a card, but not making meaningful connect. Let's connect with 10 people, listen to the conversation and make a deeper connect. Body language. So all these factors are assimilated. So the challenge was, what would be the audience? Always relate to the audience. Also, there's an urgency to release it, but then how do you hold back? When is good enough? Because you're never going to be 100% satisfied on a scale of 1 to 10. So all these were challenges, but finally, and again come back to the 10 close critics I had. They told me, this is what it is, this is what you should change, this is what we feel. More storytelling was required. So I've given, because nobody wants just knowledge thrust upon them. Then effectively you have to tell stories. Why are you saying that? If I'm saying remember names, can I illustrate by example how to remember names? So all that come together, then we realize, okay, now is a good time to finally go ahead and bring it out in the market. So those were more internally imposed challenges, of course, than to get the right publisher, put it out, all those other logistical challenges are not challenges, but those are milestones one needs to cover. But the first personal challenge was, when is the right time? When are you happy with it to take it out? So I had a sounding board to help me overcome that.
Wow, Manoj, that's incredible. When I teach behavioral styles in class at the MBA level in the university, we talk about the different characteristics people have. They are the controllers, the analyzer, the supporters, and the promoters. The problem with analyzers is about 70% of the population. And the analyzer is the kind of a behavior that you gotta be perfect before you publish it. And it's very, 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 very challenging because perfection is really a subjective issue. Somebody can look from the outside. So I really fully understand what you're saying, Manoj. But until we are inside happy, I would not want to publish anything that I don't feel comfortable. And I'm sure that I'll feel uncomfortable once it's published. Thank you, Manoj. Vlady, what about you? From the idea to the publishing, what kind of challenges did you meet?
Well, when one is not a professional writer, that all he or she does. In my case, running a complex importing business and working in China for so many years and traveling throughout the world, it's finding the time to write. And when it takes so many years, at times you forget the beginning, the middle, and you always have to review what you wrote, and that's even more time consuming. And I realized that at the end of the 15 years, as much as I knew just about everything that I wrote, but I realized I forgot the name here, I forgot the name there. Sometimes I misspelled the name because Romanian names are not, you can spell it this way or that way. And going back and forth was challenging. But then it comes to the editing part, and then which is a challenge in itself, because as much as I pride myself with my English at 95%, I would say, still you need an editor that always finds syntax, grammatical, punctuation mistakes. Even if you are born in this country, you would need an editor. And finding the editor is challenging. And finally, you settle on one, and he goes through the book and takes his time. And then you read the book again after that editing, and you realize, you know what, he made more mistakes than I made. So you go back to, square one and get another editor. And finally, when that is done, is the publishing side. Do I go self-publishing, or I go through a traditional publisher? Traditional publishers today are so expensive that doesn't really make sense unless you are J.K. Rowling or one of these guys. Yes. So obviously the self-publishing was the best route to go via Amazon and Barnes & Noble, because they make it extremely easy. And if you need to change anything, like I was telling you before, if you need to change anything in the book, you just change your whatever parts of the manuscript and just reload it. And then in a book like mine that, it's full of illustrations, not only back and forth, but in the book itself, I have like 30 illustrations. It's working with an artist to develop all these illustrations, and they change as the time goes by and ideas change. So all these are, basic challenges on publishing a book, writing the book and publishing the book.
And I found fascinating, Vlady, that you have a fantastic front cover and back cover. I really love the designer. I told you, the guy who designed the cover of your book, it's just fantastic. It's beautiful. It's well done. It's very professionally done. So I want to acknowledge you and compliment you for finding it. Because to find very often you can tell the book from the cover, right? Or you can't.
Yes.
So thank you, Vlady. Fantastic. Good. What about you, Joan? From you multiply the challenges of Manoj and Vlady by 17 or 20 times because of the number of people. How did you keep your sanity or your wellness?
So the great thing about it is that I am a publisher and I have a team of people that work for me. So I have a team of graphic designers. I have a team of editors. And from an editing perspective and listening to Vlady, there is two different types of editing that has to go in your book: developmental editing and proofreading. So you need two different editors to always edit your book anyway, right? And that is the most challenging thing. But my editor-in-chief, I think she is the best in the country. So I know that I have one of the best person working on my behalf. So that part, I didn't have an issue. The challenge for me was, how do I get each person to tell their story and not let them lose their voice in a book that has one theme. So I had to meet with each author to hear their story and then identify what part of their whole life journey, their life experience needed to be in this book. And so between the author and myself, we identify what we wanted to be featured in the book based on Manifesting a Dream Deferred, which was the subtitle. And once we identify that, I gave them a basic layout of how I need the book to be written or their chapter to be written. They need to have a hook. So the story needs to start off with something that's going to hold the reader attention. So whether it's something incredible or something devastating, that's how we want the story to start. Then we go back chronologically and give the backstory. And then we go into the resolution and then how did it end and what is in it for the reader? Because that's one thing about writing a book. We can tell our story all day long, but if that reader does not feel that it's benefiting to them, then your book really did not have the impact. And even if it's a fiction book, people read fiction book because they want to feel good or want to feel excited or want to feel like, I love Dracula. As a little girl in Jamaica, we used to watch that series on TV. So I'm all about Dracula and I know a lot about him based on the series. But in our, and what I find, Professor Roberto, as I was doing this book, that there were so many similar stories within the authors. So I decided to put the author's story in sections. So I came up with 4 sections within the book. One was called Relentless Resilience. One was called Fractured Foundation. The other was called Deliberate Damage. And one was called Blossoming Bravery. So I was able to put 4 stories each in those categories. So a person that buys the book can just open the table of contents and look at the section that they resonate with and then go straight to that section and read those stories. So the challenge for me was getting everyone together. Of course, we took a year to write this book, but there was a structure. I had a standard of operating procedure for this. So there was accountability, there was a monthly call, there was a whole structure. You can't do an anthology and just, coming up with things all over the place. There was an incomplete structure to making this happen. And this is my 6th time doing this type of thing. So it's become pretty easy for me to overcome any challenges that come my way.
Wow. It's just incredible. It's incredible to have the 3 of you today. It really does. We also have today 2 people I invited for a specific reason. One of the person I invited is Joan T. I met him at the Global Chamber Israel meeting about a week ago, and I was fascinated. Why was I fascinated? And I was fascinated because he talked about creativity for book writers. Now, as a scientist, in my prior life, I was a scientist in physics research. And the question people asked me when I was there is, how do you create these things? How do you come up with these stuff? And the creative process is a very, very challenging to be described. But the question is, how do you empower it? How do you enlarge it? So I invited Joan. Joan has a special series of programs and a methodology that he will describe for the next 10 minutes or so, and then I'll open up to questions from everyone. The reason for which I invited Joan and Limor Friedman, is because today we were listening to absolutely incredible writers, learning so much, but also wanted to give them present and bring something else in addition to their wonderful story. And so Joan is going to be talking about his creative approach to writers. And then Limor, after that, is going to be talking about the interview video process as possibly a marketing tool for for book writers. So in the end, questions, I'll open up the floor and you can ask questions to anyone. So Yarin, why won't you proceed? And thank you so much for reaching us. I know you had challenges with links and whatnot, so I'm glad that you were able to navigate intelligently in the world of broadband communications. So thank you so much, Yarin, for being here. You need to unmute yourself so we can hear you. There you are.
Thank you, Professor Roberto, and I would like to thank Doug that helped me get finally the link. By the way, I know Limor Friedman from our mutual work in the Israeli television many years ago. She lives in Canada. She's a very talented lady, and I'm looking forward to listen to her after my part. Anyhow, I deal with systematic creative thinking, how to increase creative thinking in a way that is not dependent on skill or inspiration as the usual image of creativity, but can be taught and learned by everybody. It doesn't matter if you think about yourself that you are creative or square. In both cases, you can be more creative than you are if you are equipped with the right techniques that spread all over the world, developed all over the world. There is no official faculty how to be more creative. It's not like sociology or psychology or physics, but there are all kinds of methods that were researched scientifically in your home court, Professor Roberto, and the Americans were more concentrated on the inventor, the psychological and the sociological background of the inventor. The Europeans were concentrated on the process itself of creativity, and the Russians were interested in the end product. They took about 40,000 patents, and they identified the main principles within them, and they actually developed all kinds of tools, thinking tools, that can be adopted by people who didn't invent any patent. So I took the creme de la creme of all of them. I added some of my own based on Israeli approach as a startup nation, based on ancient scrolls of Judaism 1,000 years ago that were very creative at that time and contain all kinds of very challenging and creative methods how to not to agree, but still not to depart, and still to create sort of a harmony of complementary opposites. And I took all of it, and I believe in experiential way of teaching. So in my workshops to about 3,000 organizations up till now and companies, some of them all over the world, Bloomberg and IBM and Microsoft and so on, the Israeli Mossad and a lot of others. I think that they can achieve a relative advantage in a very competitive vicinity or arena. They can develop new products. I deal with practical creativity. I don't think that Leonardo da Vinci or Picasso knew how to teach to be Leonardo da Vinci and Picasso. I don't know either, but I know how to help you adapt techniques and tools to be more creative than you are, as I said before. And the book that I wrote that is called The Impossible Made Possible, the same name as my workshop, actually is going to the same direction, through the same direction, because I use all kinds of techniques, how to uproot fixations, how to identify them. There are so many enemies lies in our minds that we are not aware of them at all. And I'm trying to make the people more aware of them in a very amusing way, because otherwise it'll be too threatening. So it contains humor, contains all kinds of anecdotes, but it doesn't harm the seriousness and the depth of the content, the context, and the significance. And the book was inaugurated about 2 or 3 months in Amazon. was ranked number 8 in the world for a short time. Now I don't know. I'm sure that it's less, but it was a nice success, and I liked it. And in Hebrew, it was very successful here in Israel, and it was quite difficult to translate it because it was based on a very local and ethnocentric surrounding here in Israel, which is just tiny island that doesn't reflect the American way of writing. So I had to translate the cultural way that it was written in Israel to an American cultural norms, and it took time, and it was quite a challenge. But well, the readers would judge. Anyway, I don't want to. I'm not aware of the time limits, so I don't know if we still have a few minutes more or not.
We're about right on time, Yarin. In fact, I'm opening with a couple of questions from the audience. Please do raise your hand or ask the questions. Or my question is: do you do both this on-site workshops and online workshop, or what's your modality?
Yeah, I mainly. Till the Corona crisis, I did 3,000 times frontal workshops, most of them in Israel, about 20 times around the world, China and Singapore, and the ones in the States to all kinds of managers in leading companies, Europe, Russia, and so on. But mainly in Israel, frontal. Since the Corona, I do it in Zoom, mostly. And
awesome.
Depends, 1 hour and a half, one day, few days, and so on. Depends what are the needs of the target audience. The target audience, from my standpoint, is mainly managers who has to to think differently, and mainly educational leaders and teachers, because they set the future by their students. And if they block the students, then the future would be gray. And if they encourage and equip the students to be more creative and will help them having all kinds of tools, then the future would be much brighter.
That's awesome. Thank you, Yarin. Let me, to be fair to everybody, and especially to Limor, who's been very patient listening to what we've been talking about, etc. Limor, why don't you tell us a little bit? I was fascinated by what you were doing. You didn't talk about video interviews for book writers, but the moment you said that, because my past experience, I worked with 2 clients that do trails for books in the US, video trails, etc. Tell us a little bit what is that you do and what could you apply to book writers.
Thank you. First of all, I have to say this is one of the best meetings I have been in a long time, and you're amazing. You have beautiful questions. And I enjoyed it. And I wrote notes because I feel like you're tapping right into what I'm trying to explain to people, and you already understand that all. And I'm talking about video, so I don't think I can do that without showing a video. So if you don't mind, I would love to share a screen and show.
Sure. I think I'm not the control of the screen, but Cesar or Doug, can you give Limor the ability to share her screen, please?
She can do that. No worries.
Awesome.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Doug.
We have about 10 minutes overall left.
Oh, okay. Perfect.
So
I'll be short.
So I will say, Limor, 5 minutes at the most with the video, and then we'll open up the questions.
Okay. So I have a 3 minutes presentation, and then some examples that you can all use on your everyday.
Thank you so much.
And I think I actually have to share it with a sound, otherwise nobody will know anything. Okay, there we go. So this is my news channel, and that's my new company. what we do is we make you as a host. So it's the link between business and news. My name is Limor Friedman, and I was a live show editor. And what we create now is we make you a host of your own show. So when you ask questions, you get the credibility. And there is consistency when it's a monthly or weekly show. You create segments and you reach your target audience properly. And you always tell them what's going to happen in the next show. What we found was really, really a surprise for us is the connections. When I asked, John, can I have a Zoom meeting with you? But how about if I ask you, can we interview you to our news show? You will be surprised how many people enjoy that.
Together a little fundraiser and see if we can raise the funds, get the community involved. And so that was the impetus of it, and that's where we started it. Now there's so many struggling musicians and struggling venues and people that support the arts and the community. I mean, we're going to be one of the last ones to come back because...
So this is an example from somebody that we, one of our clients.
Do you know where we are? We're at 1000 Parker. It's the artist studio in Vancouver. And do you know what's going to happen next month? Stay tuned, because you're going to be in for a lot of surprises, and you're going to meet some wonderful artists and see some amazing art here at the Vancouver Culture Crawl in Vancouver.
So Doris is an art consultant, and we created a show for her, and she always promotes the next show. So she created consistency. She has her audience, and we go and we film in different locations. So we work with talented hosts to create lineups and segments. We put the information together. We put the intro, the outro, the music, and the visual together. We spoke about connections. So this guy, she was trying to connect with for a very long time.
Them will actually be presented here at the Rothstein Theater live.
And as I was walking, I realized, well, perhaps I should be documenting.
And that's the credibility. You can tell she knows what she's talking about.
Thank you for watching, and thank you to all the wonderful artists of this month who shared their joy of the arts with you.
We always give at the end all the credits and website and whatever you want because it's your show. And there is an outro, of course, music. So this is about what we do. And I was fascinating with so many things that you said here. First of all, Manoj, you said about simplifying. This is exactly that people want to understand. And you want to simplify, you want to make it fun and enjoyable and flow. Flow is the best thing. I think somebody said it about the editor, the development editor. So this is what we do. Gloria, was there you about the development? You have a development editor. So because I live in Canada.
It was John.
John, sorry. So Johnson. So we. Because I live in Canada for 14 years and I left the news industry. We were working, Yarin and I were working in it's a national TV station. So there is nothing to do with business and we were journalists. But after 14 years in business, I was looking for this connection between the business and the news, how to bring videos to a better place and how to create news in a better way for businesses, because when you talk about you, it's really just you talk about you. But when you interview other people, that gives you the credibility that you actually an expert in your field, and that is what makes the difference. And I think Professor Roberto, you were talking about target market, who is reading your book. So that's exactly the thing. I get sometimes the questions from people. How many subscribers you have? First of all, if this is your show, it's your YouTube channel. And the second thing, if everybody is your target market, everybody and nobody is about the same person. So if you choose a target market and use this content to get to this target market, that's what's going to work. So for example, I want to show some few little things, just so you have the idea of what's going on.
Yeah, you got 1 more minute more.
Okay, so this is another guy, just so you see the totally different style.
What is the most effective tool to support retail employees in a post-COVID workplace?
We have the same last name, but we're not related. It's just very common name in Israel. But the point, he's an HR expert, marketing for specific HR software. So his target market is HR, and he invite people for an interview. This guy is, you all probably know Designer Brands company. So this guy is the HR of Designer Brands. David, I think, what's his last name? David. Yeah. Yes. So we added to the conversation lots of visuals, and we also like to connect it to the news in a way. So we have something here that is like a couple of seconds of one of the surveys the company did about HR, and that connect the thing to the news.
That's awesome. So Limor, didn't mean to stop you, but I want to have the opportunity to say this to everybody, and then I want to leave the space to Gloria and Jackie to talk about the next month meeting. First of all, I want to thank everybody today. It was really an incredible meeting. I enjoyed it. It just touches my heart. And the second one is we learned a lot, but I do invite you, all of you, or each one of you, to get in touch directly with Yarin. The Global Chamber, Doug or Cesar or Gloria will provide you the direct information so that you can contact and ask whatever question you want to have. The same thing with Limor, because these two people, I mean, not only they have experience, but they really can make a difference. In one is what's going to be your next book and how you approach the creativity of creating a new thought process. And the second one, how do you bring it to market, which is not an easy thing to do. So is 8:58. Gloria, you got 2 minutes, and Jackie for the next month meeting.
No, it's Jackie's time, not mine.
Okay.
Jackie.
Jackie.
Jacqueline.
It's Jacqueline, actually.
Jacqueline, thank you.
We're going to get like Manoj. You got to get the pronunciation right. So there you go. Next month, I am extraordinarily excited about Yarin. We're going to continue this conversation, and we're going to really dive into the impossible made possible. And I truly believe in the possibilities of life. So I'm excited to hear more from Yarin about that. We'll also be talking to Shankar Damodaran. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. He's the executive director of the Global Chamber in Ahmedabad, and he is passionate about AI and the bringing it to the world to transform the world. And he's a digital strategist. And so I'm really excited about that. And we also are hoping that we can get Adi Jaffe on board, who wrote a book called The Abstinence Myth. And he's all about alternative addiction treatments. And so I think that's going to make for some really interesting conversation for next month, which is July 20th. And I want to say thank you to all the authors today for your wonderful insights and the great work that you're doing. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Jacqueline. And putting my French accent, Jacqueline, merci beaucoup.
Merci beaucoup.
Merci también. And Manoj, I don't know how to say in Hindu in India, but thank you so much in English. And Joan, thank you so much. And arigato gozaimasu in Japanese and whatnot. Grazie mille in Italiano. Dankeschön, etc., etc. So thank you so much for participating and attending. The hour went fast, totally fast. But again, thank you, Doug, for the opportunity to all of us to be able to share such wonderful events like we had today. And thank you,
appreciate that, Professor. Gloria, did you want to make any closing comments? And I'm happy to make a closing comment as well.
I would like you to just take the baton and make the closing comment.
Well, thank you, Gloria. And I'll apologize on two things. One is we ran out of time for questions. And so I think what Professor Ancis was mentioning was please send in any questions. And again, apologies that we ran out of time. Secondly, apologies for all of the mispronunciations for Manoj, for Shankar Damodaran, and also Jacqueline, who the way you pronounced it today, I think I finally understand it. So Jacqueline sounds like the best way to approach that. And anybody else that we messed up. As somebody named Doug Brunke, with the only Doug Brunke in the world, I'm very familiar with people messing up names, and I know how important that is. So sorry. Manoj, we should learn from in terms of what he talked about in terms of connecting and listening and helping and adding value, and a name is part of that connection. So Manoj, thank you for that. Joan, I was particularly struck by your comments and thoughts, and it really resonated with me about how you talked about people who, all of us, have stories within us and we can't get them out. And a book is a great way to do that. And so your ability to help people get those stories out to more people is such a valuable service. It creates a legacy for them, and it helps all of us learn from each other's experience. And so thank you for almost a definitive statement that you spoke to today about what all authors contribute to our community and well beyond Global Chamber as well. Really appreciate those thoughts and what you're doing. And Vlady, you're amazing. You know, you really are the Renaissance man, Mr. China, Mr. LA, Mr. Romania, Mr. Everything. And the level and the depth that you've written on is just spectacular. Really appreciate all of that. Limor, thank you as well. Professor Ancis, I want to make sure I thank you for your moderation today and all that you do and your support of Global Chamber. And Yareen, you're amazing too. And so many extraordinary people in the audience as well. So hope to see you on July 20th. Looking forward to hearing more from Yareen and the other speakers. And in the meantime, we're going to have a lot of activities within Global Chamber. And the most important thing that we do at Global Chamber is connect you to opportunities. There was, by the way, one speaker on the call today. I think he's left already, Matthew Sawyer. I want to keep calling him Matthew Sweet, who was a musician that I'm not sure is around anymore, but Matthew Sawyer works at Columbia and NYU, and he has a book coming out in November, and he's joining Global Chamber today through the New York chapter. So he'll be another person to add to our authorship. He knows Lainey. Lainey, I think if you're still there, he's spoken with you about landing in the US. Is Lainey still there? Yeah, hi, Lainey. So he mentioned you in our conversation earlier today, and he says hi, for what it's worth. But where I was headed was just before this call, I was on a call with one of our members in Dallas who's visiting Egypt, and then he's going to UAE later in July, and he said, "Hey, here's who I would like to meet." And so those are the things that we mainly do. When members have needs and interests and want to connect up with certain people, that's what we do. We've been a little bit behind because of me, but now I'm catching up and I'm almost caught up. And so we're doing a lot better with that. Also, we have more on our team now. We just added 6 people to the team in the last couple of weeks. And so I think you're going to see a lot more of that. So I welcome all of you members to connect in, to participate, and also just to ask for help. There's nothing better than that, because the Global Tribe is really extraordinary. Not just Global Chamber, but all the people here, all the people that I know within the Global Tribe are very helpful and supportive. Thanks again, Gloria, and thanks everybody. You all have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you.